band. He said, that'd be right. The only time I get an award in my life is, get an award for being an old bastard.
But I'll still take it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So I had to laugh at that. And he's a great dude. Can talk to him for hours, and his mind's going a million miles an hour. And a great player, great drum player. Now, those sort of guys, they backed all the artists that used to come from overseas, all your Liza Minnellis and, you name it, all these great singers and artists. And they know how to do that. That's old school.
That's old school.
And I kind of brought up on that sort of. My drum teacher was the same. He was when I was a young teenager, he was 60, and he was a resident at Tivoli Theatre in Sydney. And you name it, from Frank Sinatra to everyone, they backed him.
Isn't that crazy?
They didn't travel around with backing bands back then. They went to, each city that had a full-on, top-quality band that could back them. And it's all reading.
We would be frightened by that. In this day and age, like most musos, you feel like you need to know your guys in your team, in your band, like every bit of it, to show up.
Not only play drums, he'd play xylophone, glockenspiel, and he'd have gongs around him and skulls and all this percussion, and he'd do it all on his own. There wasn't several percussionists that, like in, say, Santana or something, he'd be playing a lot. And so that was my heritage, really, of, learning how to play.
Is that through sheet music?
Well, you've got to read music to be able to...
which I never have.
...really understand it all, and see what's going on. Because if you could... The big thing, too, you sometimes used to notice is people can read well, not necessarily great live players, because they're following the dots, and they kind of lose that whole feeling thing of... that organic thing of playing with other players and having your ears open and listening to the little nuances and the little things that go on. And most band players will tell you that now. You listen to each other and you play off each other, right? Yeah. So there's that fine line between being able to be a reader and also being an ear player. To be able to join the two together. And I think that's held me in good stead, because I've always been more an ear player than anything. But to be able to do a lot of shows at Twin Towns in the earlier days and back an artist and that, just throw a sheet of music up in front of me and just follow it, Magic. So that's just because of the classical upbringing.
Classic old show, from out the front to the punter's eyes. This is great. Backstage, it's like, last minute, costume change, bang.
Yeah, that's what makes it.
But the drummer's out there all smiles. There's people, look at him go. He knows it's back to front, but it's really,
I mean, look, my first thing of getting into the heavy rock side, I love my heavy rock, truly. And say back in the Finch and Swanee days, that's what we did. We played heavy rock, It wasn't heavy metal, hard rock. It's full-on rock. Not rock and roll. A little different AC/DC, they're more rock and roll based. We were hard, heavy rock, okay? The more you can smash it out, the better. That came from my brother coming back from Vietnam, I think around about 1970. And he was a pilot over there, so he flew his own plane back, a big Hercules or whatever, and had this huge, great stereo set up next to him that he brought back in the plane. And he got home at parents' place and he set it up in the old Kenwood gear, the top quality Kenwood stuff, with these speakers about 4 foot high. And he started playing this stuff, and it was all reel to reel back then that he brought back all these songs. And it's like those movies that you see, Good Morning Vietnam, and they play all the old classics. That's the sort of stuff he was bringing back. So I was listening to Small Faces, Led Zeppelin. I introduced Led Zeppelin to the kids at school because I had it on.
Had a window to the outside world
before anybody else had it here, and Rod Stewart, and Small Faces, and all that, and Humble Pie, and all those really hard edge bands. And I'm going, wow, it just threw me for six, right? Because I've been into a lot of other music up until then. But yeah, so how old was I then? 1970 or 15. So it was just really the start of breaking out. Music-wise.
And the effect of discovering music, going out looking for girls on a, going to some pub you've never been to and finding some band. I love that band, but I was actually chasing women,
Oh, no, the girls came naturally. You chase the music, the girls come naturally.
Some people have to chase them, But I know what you mean, mate. Back in those days, it was, everywhere you went, you'd hear a live band. And, some of them were just, they might be doing a cover of something you hadn't heard before. So you go to the record shop and browse through it and have a listen with the headphones and go, oh, yeah, I like this. Speaking of Led Zeppelin, Pete, I was the first person in my school, little country town in New Zealand, to get Led Zeppelin 2. Yeah. And every man in the school, I didn't even know half these kids, and they kept coming up to me and saying, what's it like? Tell me what's it like. I was famous for about 15 seconds, But,
tell you another funny thing we used to do back in, sort of early 70s, probably 1970, around about 1970. I was playing with a couple of different blues bands around Cronulla. Bands called Fire. Bakehouse Blues Band was another beauty because we used to practice in the back of the bass player's father's bakehouse. And I go with these boys, because they're all older, 17, 18, they'd go into town and we'd go and hit the record shops and they'd all have newspapers under their arms and be knocking off records, Muddy Waters and, the Blues Breakers albums and Eric Clapton and all this sort of stuff, sticking them in the newspapers and walking out, because no one had any money back then. And so we get home and listen to this stuff. So in a way, I was really brought up with a lot of those, big blues artists as well. Yeah. Just through listening to those records. And we did a lot of that stuff,
That's another thing. When you had records of you or a tape or a CD, because it was you owned it. Mm-hmm. You forced yourself to like it a lot of the times because it's
somebody else.
It's what you had, you know what I mean?
We pinched it.
And often it's the way too that the one you took a long time to like is now your favourite. Yeah. Have you noticed that? Something you like instantaneously gets boring very quickly. But some of my favourite music, it took me years probably to actually like it. Yeah. I think that's a sign of what actually makes a good song or a good record is something that sort of sticks around and makes you draws you back. And
what I was saying about the cover band thing, like the Daft Punk song, we're up all night to get time, up all night to get lucky. That song, right? So when I first heard that, I went, great song. My God, and the whole world loved that song. You know the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Get Lucky, like that Daft Punk song, right? It was like this old funk sort of...
Like Chili Peppers, when they come out, it took everyone's imaginations. It was funky, rocky, yeah.
But if we play Daft Punk tomorrow, it stiffs. Like, there's no magic about it.
Exactly right. It lasted 5 minutes and then died. Yeah. And organic music tends to take... There's more to it. There's more layers every time you hear it and you hear something new.
I think it's only because it's been around that long. We've had it that many times. It's in our heads. That's why I kind of think of old music. But that's from an old head. I don't know how you guys think of it, but it's...
I would have thought that when we had tapes, I'd have to listen through to get to my favourite song because fast forwarding sucked, So all those first couple of songs really well. So by the time you start to get to the end of the tape, that's what you're saying, Carl. You're really like, oh my God, I love that last song. Yeah. It took me 3 months to get to the end of that tape.
Well, exactly.
And it really pays off, and you can't stand the first one anymore.
The same with a record. You tend to put side one on first, and you tend to automatically think that the back of the second side is going to be fillers. But back in the days, they didn't have fillers. They actually had sold LPs. Yeah. Nowadays, if you bought an LP, you'd probably have one song on it, and the rest is just all fluff.
Well, how I approached music back then. Records, I'd put on the first track quickly, put on the second track quickly, put on the third track quickly. I'd go right through the album. And if there was a general kind of good feeling about it, I'd keep that record and go, yep, that's it. Okay. And then go and scrutinise and listen hard at it. But, I used to go for every track in the album. And if I thought that was worth buying, I'd go for it. So it wasn't one particular track. It was more the feeling, the more the style, the overall thing. And I think a lot of bands back then used to do albums as a concept album. Exactly. It wasn't just a couple of good songs and a couple of fillers. Like, especially you look at bands like Pink Floyd, they were concept albums. So you got into the whole feeling of the whole album. Right. And that's what I think's missing nowadays is that,
No, exactly what I was saying. And that's the trouble with this instant 7 seconds of, you're saying of concentration. If they were to bring up albums now, they'd probably have one song on it. The rest is fillers. And,
exactly.
And people, why would they want to buy them when they can actually download that one particular song off the internet for for 99 cents or whatever it might be?
Or not even download. Like in my house, I got a couple of little kids. So my boy's 5. If we find a song we like, we just play it straight off YouTube, plugged into the stereo through the iPad. But that song will be on for a month, right? So I found this the other day. we went through Coles or something, and there was a little CD rack. And I looked at it and went, I haven't seen one of those for a while. And I said to my little boy, mate, what's that? He goes, I don't know. I went, oh, my God. To this little boy, music is nothing.
Exactly.
It just comes out of the sky. And we didn't pay for it. All the songs he likes, we didn't pay a cent for, and he never will.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that all changes, though. Otherwise, there won't be any music in the future.
Yeah.
Because no one can afford to make it anymore.
But everyone will.
They're not getting paid.
Yeah.
You see.
Look, I kind of try not to look at it any other way these days, except I go out and do what I do, and fortunately, I'm with enough sort of acts that have a good response from the crowd, you might say, and they get off on it, and that gets me off because I think to myself, well, whatever I'm doing here, whether I'm old or whatever, I don't know, but whatever I'm doing, it's getting people off. And I think that's the whole enjoyment of actually being a musician. All right, if you know that you can entertain people, that's a big thing. So I kind of, we do sit around and we analyse what's wrong with music maybe, or what's wrong with the music scene, or, and I always come back to that fact that you just got to enjoy what you're doing, right? You look around, look where we live on the Gold Coast, man. It's sunshine, you got surf,
Well, not today.
Well, whatever.
It's liquid sunshine today.
It's a beautiful world we live in, and I think that's the bottom line. It's if you get to play music and get out there and have people enjoy it, I always think that's bottom line. Now,
yeah, sure, but Peter, if I can say this, mate, if you're a professional musician,
but I've
and a quality musician,
I've sat down and thought, why is the scene like it is? And all I can do is go, I've got to learn to move through that scene now. It's unlike what it was 20 years ago, where I knew probably a lot easier how to get through the scene. So I go, right, what have I got to do now to keep playing and keep enjoying what I'm doing and have other people enjoy what I'm doing? So that's the whole, exercise of it, is to keep moving forward.
I guess my point was if musicians stop being paid at all, then they've got to survive, haven't they? You see my point? So whilst there'll always be musicians love making music. They do it for the love of it. They do it to please other people, and I understand that entirely. There's a failed musician inside of me as well. Always I want to be muso. So I'm totally sympathetic with that. But my problem is that if people stop expecting to pay for music, then certain people who have got a lot of talent will not be able to actually make a living out of it, and will go and do something else, and the whole music industry suffers because of it. And that's what I hate to see. I'm all for paying. You pay a plumber to do a job. He's qualified. A musician's qualified too, depending on the level he plays at. Some are more qualified than others, and they should be paid accordingly. And I can't see any different.
This is where I see the problem. Is everyone wants some kind of fame. So when you're picking up that guitar and you're just trying to get in a band, you'll do everything like we all do. We'll do that free gig, or we'll do that. Record that thing on the hope that we'll get fame.
Oh, hang on.
But meanwhile,
what's this free business?
Yeah, I'll bet any.
The case, yeah.
Here's where we all know, there's a million kids out there doing big things with loads of following, but they're apparently no one's selling any records. And they're not maybe the only saviour is entertainment, like doing live shows. The only saviour is because for every professional muso that gets, I'm not making money, the very next 6 months is a new band going, we'll do it. We want the fame.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Fame.
Yeah, we'll pay for a couple of beers
Drew,
to feed, yeah.
You know why I feel that I've made it in this industry?
That great hair, I reckon, that cool moustache.
And because I'm still playing live every weekend. That's, to me, is the best thing I could ever wish for. And I'm actually getting paid for every gig I do. Okay, unless I do a benefit concert. There's a few things coming up, which I will mention too. It's a variety sponsored show, and it's happening out near Advanced Town Pub there. It's on the 7th of May, and it's for the variety, the variety club bashers. They thousands for underprivileged kids and kids with disease and whatever. Mason Rack, Blind Lemon. Oh, it's not Blind Lemon. What are they called now? Devil's Kiosk. We've changed the name. Devil's Kiosk. Andrew Baxter, us.